Hi, everybody. It's Diana Van Blaricom, your Vice President of ERP Strategy here at ROI Healthcare Solutions. And joining me today, this
I'm
way,
Joseph Van Denberg. This Joseph Van
is
Denberg. I'm HCM consultant with ROI Consulting.
Hey, Joe. Hey, thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, I want to talk a little bit about Infor homepages and widgets. And I know that you've been doing a lot of work with customers on configuring these and personalizing them. And I think there's some tips and tricks that you can impart for our viewers. So with that, I'm going to let you kind of talk a little bit about what widgets are, why they're important, and then maybe tell us a little bit of what you need to know when you're configuring these. So, hey, Joe, what's your widget?
Take it, my widget. I'm glad you asked me that. Um, a little bit about me. I've worked with Lawson previous to Infor for many years. In that included a bunch of work with LBI, their business intelligence solution. And mostly a lot of people think of LBI, or I thought most of the work was notifications or reporting. But in the middle of that was a whole dashboard component where you tried to present some information. It was somewhat dynamic. It, I think, was a step in the evolution. What we're doing, or what Infor has done with homepages generally, is tried to provide, that whole next level of information, functionality, usability, to make the things actually helpful. One of the things that we're talking about Mingle homepages specifically. And there was an opportunity for confusion, I believe, because Infor over the years has used the term homepages differently. Same word, different to mean different things. So a lot of times we think about, or had talked about, homepages as being kind of your landing page and synonymous with landing pages, or maybe evolving from landing pages. So when you open up Infor and you open up your applications, what do you see first? A lot of times you might see quick links and some widgets or some logo type things that are links back into the application. Also with landing pages, I know over the years you had a landing page designer where you, within landmark, is a landmark focused thing where you have different items and different links or logos to take you to different things, different places within GHR. What we're talking about today, even though the term is still homepages, are the Mingle homepage. They've developed a catalog of widgets that are beyond just icons and links back into the application. The idea mixes in that idea of a dashboard where you have an image, potentially you have an image, something to look at that is, maybe a hyperlink on crack, because it'll show you content. It's a link, it's a window into the application that'll show you stuff, may answer your immediate questions without having to get into GHR or FSM or within the application, but gives you information, but also gives you that link, and that will take you dynamically into the place you want to be within the application. So in a nutshell, go ahead.
Would you say these are kind of a window into your work then, as opposed to, how we traditionally think we use ERP software, we log in and then we're in there and we stay in there for a while and then we might go do something else. It's kind of a window into the app without actually fully being in that app.
Absolutely. And it's also, some of the clients we've worked with have developed solutions in the past where they have home pages or more resources, more if you know what you want already and need the link to get into where you're going, that's what they've developed over the years. What this latest solution allows you to do is see things to know whether or not you need to get in at all. You might have, for example, a really easy thing is a counter to say, hey, look, I might have checklists due. You can see that counter on your homepage. If it's at 0, you've got no task lists, nothing to do. If there's 2 or 3 on there and it's dynamic and one of them shows up maybe in red, you know that one's a priority and there are things to do. There's a reason to click on that. Mm-hmm. At a glance, everything might be green and you're good to go. So there's a variety of widgets that are delivered that give you that information, whether it's HR information, finance information, if you're an administrator, the Ion desk, there are a number of widgets, so that at a glance, you can see if there's something, a reason that you need to get into the application. And if there is, they're dynamically built links to take you into the application where you need to go.
So this is more of a push versus a pull that we traditionally logged in and did something. We have the system talking to us and telling us that there's something we need to do.
Right.
More of a proactive mode, right?
Right.
That's great.
It, along that line, I mean, when we talk about, you know, clients and wanting links in limiting the number of touches, because they like come to me and say, hey, look, we'd like to get to a two-touch process where we hit click one, two-click process where we click once, we click, then click again, and we're where we need to be. It's fast and easy. And I tell them, hey, look, this can be a zero-touch process. You might be able to get all the information you need without touching anything. It might be there. And
Yeah.
only click when you need to click.
When you need to take action, right?
Right. Right.
So these work from the desktop, but are they also available through InfoGo?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
um, and we'll get into this, but the evolution of my take on the evolution of Infor and Cloud Suite, and you know, my framework is GHR, but it's across the board with the Cloud Suite, is that they're working more and more where it's mobile responsive, mobile interactive, and what you do in one place happen in another. They're also working towards bringing all the work, the technical work that needs to be done, building that into the application. So a user, a power user, can get things set up and working without the need of a necessarily your traditional developer. So in-house, in your power user community, you can set up a homepage. You can take from their catalog of delivered widgets and make something that works and is pretty slick, pretty functional.
Awesome. Well, why don't you show us a little bit about widgets and maybe talk a little bit about some considerations that people need to think about when they are deploying widgets?
Sure. If you are able to see my screen, what I'm showing here is just a sandbox of widgets. As I mentioned, Infor delivers a catalog of widgets. We talked about widgets being kind of hyperactive links because they'll show you things. And I'll show you some better examples. They'll show you things, pulling it out of the application, let you know whether there's things that need to be done. For example, we had talked about just a counter. Are there things that need to be done? How many active activities do I have? Active checklists. As you're seeing here, I'm displaying a page where it has a number of widgets on it. In this case, this was for demonstration purposes, so it's not as fancy as it could be. But you know, the development plan is showing you how many active tasks and how many active checklists I have. As a test system, I have none at this time, but should I have seen that there were, oh, there's 2 on my list to do, I could click on them. It would take me into the application, and you can see it goes into GHR under my test person, and it'll bring up my profile and things that I need to do. Since there were no active tasks that I needed to do, that's consistent with there's no data in the system, no tasks set up for me.
Yeah. You know, Joe, one thing I think that has shifted with the model is it's more of that contextual navigating, right? So we try to, you know, kind of like what Apple has done, right? You bring up your app, there's something they're telling you to do something and you go do it versus having to, you know, maybe log in and navigate through the traditional channels of software. Everything is kind of real time where we need it. I call it on demand and in your hand, right? And we'll be doing some more videos and things about
Sure.
InfoGo. But I think from the user perspective, the important thing is being able to navigate in context. And by that, I mean, tell me what I need to do and take me right there to do it. Don't make me go through another channel to get there. I want to, like you said,
Right.
one click and I'm there.
Right, and for your administrators, your power users, your HR generalists, your people that are used to using the application a lot, they understand, they've already memorized what menus to go to, what sub menus to go to, those types of things. For somebody who's not necessarily in the application all the time, maybe your managers, your reps, your administrators, your employees who are not, it's not their job to work in the application day in and day out. This is, I think, where it's very valuable because they can, the person who's used to it sees for example, a widget that says my profile, and it has my information, my employee number, things like that. I'm already thinking of, the menu item in the menu path to get to that my profile. The information is displayed here, takes me to it if I click on it. So as a user of a homepage, exactly right. Don't necessarily have to be proficient with the application to be able to use it effectively.
That's fantastic. So tell us what else we need to know about home pages and widgets.
Home pages, I mentioned a little bit earlier, is that they are made so that a user or a power user can set it up. They can go to a blank page, edit a page, add a widget. There's a catalog of widgets. Infor delivers these widgets. And what's kind of nice about it is that because they're being delivered, they are, GA. They are windows into the application. They're already integrated with GHR. They're already set up to be mobile responsive. As my browser window changes size, as I open these things on a cell phone, as somebody who's setting up a homepage, I don't have to worry about that part of the design. I don't have to worry about how things resize. I don't have to worry about how widgets rearrange themselves. That's kind of baked in. What I'm doing here is I'm looking for a widget that I want to add to my page. They're all categorized as different types. I can show all of them. Say all, if we wanted to organize them or tag them, find different HR items. So there's categorized by application. So I want to add birthdays and anniversaries. By clicking that plus, I have just added a birthdays and anniversaries widget to my desktop. And there it is.
That's terrific. So can end users do this, or would you recommend that you do some type of a user-focused deployment?
As far as that's the point. It's a recommendation. I clicked over as a user administrator of the application. I have the ability to set things up. There's lots of ways to set things up, and Infor has rolled this out in a way that organizations have a very broad spectrum of freedom versus control, where they, based upon their employee or user base, can determine how strictly they want to roll this out. So, for example, the system can absolutely allow any user to be able to start off with a blank screen and go out there and pick and choose which widgets they think that would be most helpful to them, add multiple pages and organize them, just like my iPhone. On page 1, I've got my work-related apps. On page 2, I do a lot of cycling on the side, so I have my bicycle-related apps. Page 3, I've got something else. So the home pages can be allowed to allow your users to have that type of abilities. And the opposite, a broad spectrum in between, but the opposite of an organization could set up a limited number of pages, establish exactly what widgets they want on which page, and roll them out, and no user has the ability to then modify it from there. So it's a pretty broad spectrum.
So they can do either or.
The way that gets accomplished.
I was going to say that if they could do either or, that tells me that there needs to be some responsible use of configurations, right? So that you have maybe some role specific standards, right? And then maybe some more of your power users would have a little bit more flexibility.
Right.
That makes sense?
Absolutely. And what they've baked into the setup and the settings are default rules that apply to everybody. So for example, if you were to allow people to access the published page, for example, the page catalog, and pick which pages. You can make a default rule that applies to everybody, and then a more specific rule that says, okay, for this group, maybe based on security role, for this group of people, they can do something differently. And for this group of people, they can do something differently altogether. So as it filters down and say, okay, Joe Van Denberg is in this group, he can access the page catalog and do different things. This other person who doesn't happen to fall in that specific role, all right, the default rule applies. What we've done is put together kind of a guide template that translates the different settings, the different setup options, puts them on a page. So from a documentation and a planning standpoint, you can go through that. So we were just looking at the homepage settings. So we can go through and record, for each setting, what the setting is, what the description is, what the default value we want it to be, and then if there are any specific rules. And that way, that's one way to capture on a page, how we want this set up, what we intend it to do, and something to come back to. This is particularly helpful as we're setting up, somebody, not only do we have a sandbox where we're setting things up, trying things out, but because as, part of a design process, that's pretty fluid. We have a document where we can go back to and say, okay, here's a capture.
Yeah,
And it's not
that's
just an export and import, which Homepages allows you to do.
we're not guessing what
It's
was
something
set
on a
up.
page that you can see.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Part of ROI's advanced implementation methodology is some of these tools and templates. So thank you for sharing this template, because I think it's important, not only from a design perspective for users to know what they can do, but I think it's also important once we get to the go live, if they wanted to go back and, we talk about optimizing roles and processes post go live, how do they know what was done? And how would they optimize it if we didn't have that well documented? So I think it's a really important piece of some of the deliverables in our methodology that really lays out exactly what was configured for the client, so that if they do want to optimize and change, maybe improve on some things going forward, they know exactly what to do and where. And that, I think, is a key piece of it.
Yep. So we put that document together just to record things, the different settings, the different things. It's handy just to throw in some screenshots. So you could say, okay, here's a snapshot of what it looked like. So we have an idea.
Perfect. So do you see people using widgets with maybe some of the more traditional access points like SharePoint? So if I'm on my homepage, like say I work in HR and I might have some shared documents that I work with employees on sitting on a SharePoint site somewhere. Can I add that to my widget so that I don't have to go out and navigate to SharePoint, that I could just get to my documents sitting on SharePoint right from within the application?
The widget catalog that Infor delivers are a lot of application windows, little bits of the application that show up on a page that look really nice. But some of the widgets that they deliver are open containers. One of them is called a menu widget. One of them is called a web widget. The menu widget allows an organization literally to set up a widget with links, the URL links, a list of URL links. So to do exactly that, if you have a URL link that you can put it on this menu widget, and it just lists a bunch of hyperlinks. So you can link them back into SharePoint. You can link them back into your intranet. You can link them back if you have another system that people use a lot, but doesn't necessarily integrate with Infor. It's some other system that they use. You can provide them a link, and it takes them right there. The experience, and you keep in mind, just like anybody who's used to internal systems, if you can link to it and use it from wherever you are, that's important. Just because it's on a home page doesn't bypass any of your security, doesn't bypass anything like that. It is truly a link to that system. So if somebody doesn't have access to that system, they're not going to get access to that system through this link.
Yeah, that's important. So, what I'm thinking about is like a manager, right? So when we talk about manager space, which is the manager self-service
Correct.
dashboard, right? And I'm working with my direct reports. As a manager, you know, in a lot of the healthcare organizations, they may have a non-infor time and attendance system, right? So we could put links to Kronos, for example, right on their dashboard. And while they're managing their employees, they could also go, you know, easily navigate over to log in and approve time cards, right?
Correct.
Um, those kinds of things. And I think that's important because, you know, as we look at the evolution of software and we look at how software design has turned a corner in the last, you know, 5 to 10 years, really getting into that contextual navigation, and I think that's important. There, you know, I think there's going to be a day where everything operates seamlessly together, and hopefully AI won't take over the world by that point. But I think we're, you know, we're moving towards more of that. It doesn't matter what system you're on. We're using software in the role that we are filling.
And in that moment that you were speaking, I added a blank menu widget, two of them, to a desktop. And then what this is saying is, hey, add a link. One of the topics that we'll probably get to, or maybe we wouldn't have time this time, but when widgets come up as part of developing, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Not because they don't work, but because they're not set up quite right yet. And the key is where in the setup do I need to take care of something? Is it a security issue? Is it an application issue? Is it have I set it up to go to the right place? Is it just a matter that there's no data available, that it's going to the right place, but there's no data in my test system? But in this case, you can see that I'm getting a message that no content is available. Well, it's because I need to add a link. So we're going to call this Joe's menu.
Take us to your favorite cycling website.
my go-to for just demonstration is CNN, but we can add different icons and things. I called the link Joe's menu, even though that's truly the
link.
The link name. It's telling me the requested site is currently unavailable because I probably
Do we need an HTTP in there?
I just see it in my PS.
So while you're doing that, you know, what I'm thinking about is even for the HR folks, the recruiters, the different websites that we go to, we may have, you know, in HR, it's a broad spectrum, right? It might be a benefit vendor site that we go to. It might be unemployment. It might be SHRM. It might be, you know, an internal site. I think there's a lot of opportunity to really consolidate our navigation. But again, I think people need to be responsible with what they're doing as far as what they're allowing, right? Yes, you're just gonna be directed there, but you could go crazy and have, you know, widgets that have all kinds of links
Sure.
on them, and that might be appropriate. But I think for, you know, one of the things we learned with these implementations is the stuff you want on your homepage is the stuff you do the most frequent, right?
Right.
Especially when you get to mobile, because you only have so much real estate. So you want it to be the things that you get to the most, that is front and center for you to access. So there's some considerations with what you're gonna, you know, think
Right.
about. I guess the point is think about what you're gonna put on there, right? Yeah.
Right. And I've dabbled, but I'm no web designer. But I think the concept is similar in that this particular page is an example of, you know, an employee dashboard, not because it's well designed, but just an example of employee widgets that are available. And what you just mentioned, Diana, was that likely we would not want all these widgets on one homepage. It might take longer to load. On a phone, do you want to scroll through 15 widgets to get to the one that you want? Ideally, there would be identify, like you said, just the high volume, high value widgets that work for you and your organization. There's the ability, rather than 30 widgets on one, or I think 20 is the max, but 20 widgets on one page, to make a second page, make more focused pages, either on generally on roles. In an employee role, these might be the core ones important to an employee. As a manager, here's some core ones. Um, if your organization allows people to set up their own pages, they might determine that as a third or fourth page, what is most helpful to them. And um, we mentioned that these home pages are mingle home pages. It works in the mingle level, that umbrella application overall. On one page, it's no sweat to put a financial widget and a HR widget and an Ion Desk widget all on one page, because they're all different windows into the applications. Even though it's all Infor, it could be different applications within Infor, and they're all that's not an issue going cross application.
Yeah, but again, I think that goes back to usability, right? So
Absolutely.
get on my soapbox about usability for a minute. You know, one of the things that you want to think about when you're designing these home pages and using widgets is usability. Who are the people? What is their role? And what do they need to do their job, right? Those are the 3 points for usability. Who are the people? What is their role? And what do they need to do their job? And that will give you the context for what to put on your homepage.
Absolutely.
Now, here's a question for you. What if we're doing things that are timely at particular points in the year, right? So the one that comes to mind for me would be goals and performance, right? We might be doing the goal process, performance process annually. And I might want to have a widget here on the homepage that takes me right into set my goals or, you know, complete my appraisal, do some feedback. But then, you know, 6 months from now, I don't want that front and center. So is it possible for users to, in a timely, you know, whatever that time is during the year, swap out, move widgets, whatever they want to do, add a widget for goals and performance, have it be up front if you're deploying these by role, right? And then move it or take it away later when we're completed with the process, so that my widgets that are showing on my homepage or showing on my phone are relevant to also the time of year, maybe.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm showing something real quickly. There's an opportunity to do announcements. Similar
Ah.
idea, banner type announcements. There's ways with banners and images and pages even to schedule them on when they're available and who they're available to. So yes, you can do that. It also, because you're scheduling it, if you define it on a start and stop time, you don't have to remember to go in there at midnight on when when enrollment's done and turn it off.
I was just
It'll
going to
shut
say
off by
open
itself.
enrollment reminders, right? Open enrollment reminders. Remember to do your goals.
Right.
Don't forget you've got your second COVID shot today, right?
And while the sky's the limit, and each organization knows how a little bit better how their tools are being used.
Mhm,
Some organizations, Infor is front and center all the time. It's always up. In others, it's a tool that we go to when we need to. So the type of announcement is part of the consideration.
mhm,
In an announcement about a new feature or functionality within an Infor, a new homepage that you rolled out, open enrollment, things that you're doing within the application would be prime opportunities for announcements along those lines.
mhm.
If you're doing an announcement on something totally unrelated, and your organization is one that may not be in for all the time, maybe a different place would be more effective. It wouldn't hurt to put it here.
Yeah.
But those are the different types of considerations to think of. Um, but yes, scheduling the time of when things are available, certain pages are available, certain images are available. Um, with banners, you can rotate images out. And that helps you also as an organization. We were talking about, coming up with pages that are helpful towards particular roles or towards particular functions. A very large organization might have different pages that are more applicable to different facilities or regions of their organization.
Mhm.
And you can set things up that way too.
By location.
Mhm.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm thinking more, you know, people need to think about the role or the function when they start looking at which widgets to use, what's going to be more helpful for them. And then, you know, maybe it's a couple different lenses or sets of eyeglasses that you put on where when you're doing your build, right? So you're going to say for these roles, what are these widgets? And then for these roles at a certain time of the year, would we do something else? And kind of plan it that way. But I think it's a great way to, like we said, easy access to information, more of a push versus a pull, and in context navigation. I have a question or an alert, right? Something comes up and I need to go do something. I don't have to remember to log in, or half of us can't remember our logins anyway, but being able to get there quickly. We talk about speed to value on implementation, but I think that's so critical in the day-to-day, particularly when we're talking about employees in healthcare, right? We want them taking care of patients and not fumbling around trying to figure out how many vacation days they have.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Any other pieces of wisdom you can impart on widgets?
There's some general truths for setting things up that not specific to setting up home pages, but working, say, setting up an application anyway, that was extremely helpful to me was having 1 or 2 test users available, accounts, just like anything else, so that as an administrator, I'll back up a step. Mingle homepages comes with 4 different Mingle security roles. So these are security roles that you don't set up in Landmark, you set up in the Mingle user administration. Now that integrates with Landmark, but these are security roles that exist within Mingle user management. 4 different roles. In my opinion, most places will get away with just using 2. You need the user level so people can open up homepages and see stuff. And you need, in my case, I think just the administrator level that has all administration access. They deliver 2 intermediate levels, so there can be some content administration without application administration. Practically, that may or may not be helpful. So the 2 roles, and the thing is, as we set up an employee desk homepage or a manager-oriented homepage, as an administrator, I don't have that employee experience because I have super user roles. I need to be able to experience what the user's going to be able to experience. So being able to log in as a user level security, see what they see, make sure things are set up, that really helpful. Another thing that I think people need to know is as far as documentation goes. I love documentation. I use user guides as bedtime reading. It was a little frustrating to me getting started with this because the documentation that was specific to Mingle homepages talked about the administration a lot, which was great, to how to set up things, the settings, everything you need to know along those lines. But what I'm putting on those pages are widgets. I have a catalog of more than 100 different widgets to pick from. I couldn't find how to use all of them. And the key is look in the application documentation. There's a chapter in GHR. There's a chapter on setting up your Mingle homepage widgets, and it's the GHR widgets. In FSM, in there for IDM, document management, there's some widgets. So look in the documentation for your application for those widgets that relate to that application. So that's a key.
So there isn't like a grand widget user guide. It's embedded in the functional application user guides.
That's kind of why I like our planning document, because it at the very least pulls it all together, has all your summary descriptions of each widget and what application they relate to all together.
So people can find them later. That's fantastic. All right. Well, Joe, thanks for spending some time with us today. I know it's very helpful. What else you got?
The thing that I found very helpful about Mingle homepages is that a non-developer, a user, a power user can set them up, get it set up, put pages together, make them meaningful, and the programming is done already as the widgets are developed. As you get to the next level of still non-development, but to the next level, you can utilize the older technologies of the Landmark landing pages, because the landing page designer has a widget maker that lets you create widgets to do things that aren't delivered in your widget catalog, but lets you do things. You can create widgets still without programming. It's still setting things up. But if you create that widget intended for the Landmark landing pages, and it's a Landmark widget, you can take that and use that web widget that I mentioned earlier and use that as your container for the landmark widget you did with Landing Page Designer, and get that functionality on your homepage, and you get credit for being a genius. It's great.
It's very inventive. It's very inventive.
It's using the technology that's there.
Hmm.
There is documentation in the documentation to say, hey, look, here's how to use a web widget. It's just a container specifically for these landing page landmark widgets that you can create so that they show up on your Mingle homepage.
On your homepage. So really, the sky's the limit, but I also want to impart responsible use of your technology,
You
right?
might have said that a few times.
Yeah, people can go crazy, and I think understanding what people really need, right? Meet them where they
Right.
are, understand what they really, really want and need in their role. And, I would suggest that people go check out our video on Move, Groove, and Improve, which is really a change management um, activity that you can do. So if you're wondering what to put on your front page, you could do a quick exercise with those roles, right? Maybe you go to the accountants or the managers, the employees, and say, hey, we're creating these home pages. Here's kind of what they do. What's important for you? What do you want to start using from that homepage? What do you want to, not use? What other things do you need? And it's a really quick, I call it the down and dirty exercise to understand what's in people's heads, right? Because you're getting it in context. And I think it's just, you can even in conversation, you don't need to do the full Move, Groove, and Improve exercise. But when you're talking to people about usability, ask them the question, what do you want to start doing from here? What do you want to, not have to do? Because there's some automation opportunities. And then, what needs to stay there? What are some things that you need to have on this front page that would always be consistent? And what are some things that maybe we're not doing today? And just impart some conversation around change and deployment. We always talk about optimization and continuous improvement. And I think the home pages and widgets is an opportunity for organizations to continue to deliver value in context, right? As your organization changes and, throughout the year and throughout the life cycle of using Infor, to modify these home pages to put more relevant information up front and center, depending on what's going on in your company.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds like an excellent tool, because people like me might have a tendency to get into the settings and get into the toggle switches and get into the setup and get into the computer, and you see that as a challenge of how do I make this piece of application work. It really need a little bit broader understanding of what should we be doing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as
I'll
opposed
go
to
back.
can I make it work?
Yeah, I'll go back to the goals and performance conversation because, was working with a client recently and we did a bit of a focus group with some of their managers and we said, okay, well, hey, let's put this goals and performance thing right up front and center. And they're like, yeah, I only do that once a year. So what I'd rather have is how many requisitions are out there and what do I need to approve? And, so it was really enlightening, I think, for the technical folks to see that perspective of what's important is part of the beauty of being able to manipulate these home pages, is that every role is going to think something is different. I think you start with trying to deliver a standard by role, right? And then as you get into more of the power users, you may have some additional things that those folks see. And like you said, it could be based on their group, it could be based on their location. There might be a little nuance that gives them something else, but I think the tool is flexible enough to be responsive to be able to do that. And that's the great thing about the way technology is built. And I think Apple really changed that. Think about these things we're walking around with, right? You're talking about moving your icons around, and I just did that on my iPad too, and put all my cooking links on one page, so I can surf recipes at night, all from the same page. But it's usability, right? And being able to get to stuff quickly or find stuff, go back and find stuff that you were there. If we have initiative going on in our organization like goals and performance, move that icon up front and center and have people, they log in and there it is staring at them. They no longer have an excuse that, oh, I forgot, or right. It's right there front and center. You can move it after the process is over. So all really good stuff. I'm going to wrap us up because I think we've gone through a lot of really great information. I would just encourage folks, if you want more information about home pages and widgets, you can certainly reach out to us at ROI. You can check us out on our website at www.roihs.com. There's a lot more thought leadership there and videos and other great information for you. Don't forget to catch our segment where we are talking to a lot of our great experts, just like Joe, around the organization, called In the Know. We got a couple great topics and more to come there. And we're going to be doing some more product video stuff. So come back, check frequently, follow us on LinkedIn. You'll get the alerts for all of that stuff, and we'll have more from these guys in the future. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.